After months and months of speculation and trimming draft boards, everyone figured Cleveland Browns at number two. We're going to find a way to select Travis Hunter or maybe even Abdul Carter. The one thing nobody spent much time talking about was the trade down scenario. And what did Andrew Berry do? Traded down and traded down well. We're going to talk about it. John Kosko from PFF is here. Browns 3D on the OBR starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns at 3D on the OBR is brought service. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate everybody, certainly, for the lead up here to last night. Almost 5,000 people at times came out last night for the live stream as we went full round one coverage. We will do that again today for round two and three. We will be here all day Saturday as well. Certainly appreciate all the support on what became certainly an evening of coverage that none of us anticipated. The way it all broke down, in my opinion, it probably made for a much better watch because we were all reacting here just as you guys all were at home. Cleveland Browns traded down with the Jacksonville Jaguars, recoup a massive, massive haul. We're maybe attempting to trade down again from number five. At the end, the dust settled. Selected defensive tackle Mason Graham from of course University of Michigan. Graham was one of the last visits to the building in Berea as far as top 30 visits. We're going to break that down. We're going to talk about the trade. We're going to talk about possible day two selection. PFF. I guess, John, let's just start first here. The nuts and bolts of it. Graham, the player, the selection at number five overall. Certainly, it was Hunter, Carter, and then it kind of maybe after the Colorado Pro Day, it was basically Travis Hunter 24/7. I said many times the Andrew Berry uh, draft preview presser kind of felt more like the hey, we just drafted Travis Hunter presser. Andrew, I guess in an attempt to sell the pick, certainly did his best to, make the old Chevy look like a brand new Chevy. Got Jacksonville to bite. But let's start here first. Mason Graham, defensive tackle, University of Michigan.
Yeah, so if you talk to most draft analysts out there, they consider that there were either two or three blue chip prospects in this draft, and the two obviously most people considered were Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and then the third person that was sometimes but not often discussed in that was Mason Graham. And you talk to a lot of guys that I trust and my own eyes. I consider Mason Graham to be, arguably have, some of the best tape in this class and be that blue chip prospect. And, the numbers from a pressure standpoint, people aren't going to like too much, but you look at his body of work at Michigan. He's got an elite level 90 plus grades the past two seasons from an overall perspective. This past year, he's a 91.1. His run defense grade has been, elite level this past year at a 92.6. Where he was not quite as impressive from a grading profile was his pass rushing, which, this past year is an 81.1 after an 84.8, where, when they won the national championship in 2023. But when you look at his, his progression in terms of does he step up against a better competition? When you factor just only for the Power Five or Power Four competition, whatever you want to call it, his actual pass rush grade went up to an 84.8 this past year. His pass rush win percentage went up by 2% as well. So he was more effective going against stiffer competition than he was against the lesser guys in like Fresno State and Arkansas State and stuff like that. So this is a guy that's a violent, defensive tackle. He's going to really use his power, his quickness, his repertoire of pass rush moves, his good hands, his heavy hands to win at the point of attack immediately. And he does a very good job of defending against the run, along with pushing and penetrating in the middle of the pocket. So he's a guy that you can play all over the defensive line. He's not just going to be, hey, we're going to stick you at between the guards and that's where you got to be. He's a guy that you can move around, and he's going to make have a bunch of wins. And we've seen over the years how good like a Cameron Hayward is And this guy is as every bit of chance of being like that, like Chris Jones type, from Kansas City. This is the type of guy that he can be.
I think the thing that's probably most interesting about this selection for me, and having now covering this team since 2017, there are multiple times over the years, John, we have talked about the defensive tackle position as a whole, as a group. What exactly is the plan here? Because it never seems like it was a focal point, or it never seemed like this room was ever built with any sort of sustainability. Um, it was fly by night, or we got lucky. This guy wanted to sign here for a year, or this guy may have dropped. But now, between the selections last year of Mike Hall in the second round, Jawan Briggs in the seventh round, and the Browns kind of finally got out of the ether and decided to actually play the kid, to the latter part of the season and what was a lost season, and finally realized that maybe, hey, we actually did a good thing here in round 7. We didn't even know it. So you put him on the field. He started to become a contributor. You add Graham here now, and you still, certainly have Selby Harris for this year. You brought in the veteran pass rusher on the interior as well. But you now actually have the makings here of a defensive tackle room. And for a little bit of a while here, I mean, you're going to have Graham, Hall, Briggs all united in this room now. So essentially 3 seasons starting now. And I think this is the first time I've actually kind of seen that commitment to this room. It seems simple enough to us. Hey, who are the guys closest to the ball? Maybe make sure he can get those guys, and make sure you got something cooking there. But I think I like the effort that the way this was put. It's always kind of been the emphasis of who's going to be starting opposite Miles. 2 years of Clowney, last 2 years of Zadarius Smith. This year, maybe they decided, hey, with having the guys on the outside, and McGuire is not nearly like a star athletic player at the edge, but he is so technically sound. He's always going to be exactly where he wants to be. So now you start to get this pressure from the interior. Miles can chase anything down. He has to, but you have guys who should, as long as they are following the system and obviously doing their assignments, this should work for everybody. I'm just excited to finally see a commitment to the interior part of the defensive line from Cleveland.
Yeah, and you think about it though, like Andrew Berry, since he's gotten here, has drafted a number of defensive tackles, and he's just never been able to do so.
Marks, yes.
Yeah, some question marks, but it's not a position that he's like doesn't care about, and everybody this year is this offseason, everybody kind of goes, oh, let's look at the Super Bowl champion and what do they do to be successful, and obviously everybody points to their offense and defensive lines and stuff like that, and I don't think it's any like. I think it's a bit of an overreaction to say, "Oh, we need to copy what the Eagles did and stuff like that." But I mean, every team in the NFL wants to build their offensive defensive lines. I don't think that's a question. Like, right? Like everybody's trying to do that. And I think when you look at Andrew Berry's track record in terms of his drafting, his first year he drafted Jordan Elliott in the 3rd round. His second year he was Tommy Togiai in the 4th round. The 3rd year he went with Perry on Winfrey in the 4th round, Siaki Ika, and in this next year, and then last year he went Michael Hall and Jawan Briggs. So like he's attacking that position. Obviously they've paid some veterans. Obviously Dalvin Tomlinson a couple of years ago they let him go. I'm actually blanking on who it was that they signed this Michael Collins, right?
Malik, yes,
Malik Collins. They signed him to replace Dalvin Tomlinson. So they are Andrew Berry absolutely understands that the value that you have in a defensive line. And another thing too, like one of the things that a former colleague of mine, Kevin Cole on X, or he puts out good stuff in terms of like the surplus value and the like of positions and where you can find this value in the draft. And the peak value that you can find for non-quarterback positions, it's you got to find offensive tackle help early, edge rusher help early, and interior defensive line help early. Otherwise, that level of play really kind of drops off after the 1st round, significantly more than other positions. There's more value that you can find from cornerbacks, wide receivers, interior offensive linemen, and all the other positions later on in the draft. You need to find if you find an elite level defensive lineman early in the draft, and you want to take, you need to have that. Even if you don't have that need, you take them. And I think we've seen that with Jalen Carter with the Eagles a couple years ago. He was picked early in the draft because he fell to them, and they're like, yeah, we're going to snag this up. And we've seen how effective he can be. So you put just talent on the defensive line. You can rotate these guys, and it allows them to be fresh constantly because you have a good rotation. You're not trying to have a drop off in a level of play once you have a substitution out there, because the more snaps you play, the more likely it is that you're shortening your career. And the more rest you can get in between series or whatever it may be, like the better off long term and also in game for these guys, because you want to be able to still continue to pass rush the quarterback at the end of games when really the game is coming down to the line. So they're bolstering that defensive line. They're putting a lot of good players there. I'm probably don't think they're done at the edge defender position. I think they're probably going to sign somebody here soon. And we might see Shadeur Smith coming back, guys that like the veteran guys that really don't go towards the compensatory picks and stuff like that. So they're attacking that position, that group. And Andrew Berry's been doing it for his entire tenure here.
We're talking certainly about the selection of Cleveland Browns of Mason Graham last evening. We're going to get to the actual talk of the trade here in just a second with PFF's John Kosko. I also think part of the influence here and part of the thought process here is how bad things went with the Deshaun Watson trade. I think there was also a huge emphasis here on overall type of guy somebody is. And that is certainly, one of the things when Mason Graham has spoken about, he has spoken about being such a great player, but also, about the type of guy he is, the teammate he is. And look, this guy went 5th overall, went back and sat with his college teammate, Will Johnson, for the entirety of the first round. Obviously did not work out for Will Johnson. You would have figured at that point, Mason Graham by the time that first round ended, you figured Mason Graham would have already landed in Cleveland. That's the type of thing you thought here. But, for me, hey, it kind of shows what we're trying to do here, man. We're trying to make sure the culture of this team is something, that can get higher, because that's going to hopefully prevent the ebbs and flows of, a season going to the playoffs, a season of 3 wins. You don't want that. You want to start stacking together, obviously, a run here. We're going to talk a little bit more here. Everybody stick around. Your latest Browns 3D. Appreciate you all. It's been a great partnership here for the last couple of months. State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you are local to the Cleveland area, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Listen, you want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you are looking for a new, dependable time cutter zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. Veteran owned, the Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders. They are lifetime Browns fans and proud supporters of us here at the OBR. Again, if you are local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info can be found at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Browns 3D continues. We appreciate everybody, for following along here for the draft coverage here. So many came out last night for the live stream. Please join us again and do it this evening. There will be no Cavaliers game till Saturday, so you kind of have us to sit back and watch when the Browns are scheduled for 4 selections, 2 in the second, 2 in the third, which takes us to the trade itself. I think Andrew Berry got everybody hooked when he referred to Travis Hunter as Shohei Ohtani. But I think what we all did not maybe necessarily know, John, was, hey, if I can sell this thing for a king's ransom, I'm going to do everything in my ability to sell it for a king's ransom. It did seem after the selection went down, the Browns kind of, and this is where I was in line with, it was, for me, I think there's only certain positions that are worthy of being drafted number 2 overall. And, I had my doubts with Hunter. My question also, though, is wide receiver one of those positions? And if it is, it better be an absolute god of gods. Calvin Johnson went number 2 overall. Charles Rogers went number 2 overall. Well, Charles Rogers was his own issue. Braylon Edwards, number 3 overall. Not a terrible career, not number 3 overall worthy. Other two who went number 3 since 2000, Larry Fitzgerald and Andre Johnson. So 3 of the 5 that went this high were Hall of Famers. And we pretty much knew they would be Hall of Famers as long as they didn't get hurt in the NFL. As Hunter and wide receiver, I had my doubts about that. You get Jacksonville, and you had a brand new GM looking to make a name for himself, a brand new head coach looking to make a name for himself. And Hunter, in times past, basically mentioned, Jacksonville was his hometown team growing up, mentioned that and it all just worked out. So not only do you make this trade, you move back 3 spots, you get the extra second round pick, you swap 4th round picks, which gave you, before you made a selection, 6 picks in the top 126. You also bag Jacksonville's 1st round pick in 2026. So for Cleveland to sit here now, and it's going to take a lot to overcome just how terrible the Deshaun Watson trade was. But now all of a sudden you got a bountiful draft here in 2025. 2026, you're sitting there with a lot of capital right off the bat in round 1 and trying to reshape a roster and just basically almost void out a 3-year period of this franchise, except for maybe 2.5 months in 2023 where Joe Flacco basically just found the fountain of youth. The trade overall is hard.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not picking one of the premier positions, which is quarterback is one of them. So in my opinion,
for me, it's quarterback and pass rusher. I don't know what else I would take at number 2 overall.
I mean, exactly. I mean, really, unless you have a wide receiver like you're talking about, that's going to be a future Hall of Famer type of guy.
6'4", runs a 4.3.
And an offensive tackle too. Like if you have a Joe Thomas type, you're taking that guy there, right? Like, I mean, those are the positions really that you generally take that high. And I'm a huge fan of, like, if you're not taking the quarterback there, you should do everything in your power to trade that pick back, because I was for me going throughout the draft process. I was a fan of Shadeur Sanders, so like I was perfectly fine with them sitting there and taking Shadeur Sanders at number 2. Obviously he ended up falling out of the entire 1st round, so like they did good by not doing that. And obviously I think the trade that they did, Andrew Berry really won out on this thing, because you're gaining an extra 1st round pick next year, and obviously gained the number 36 overall pick in this year's class, and the other ancillary pieces I don't really care about too much in terms of like what to talk about it. But like those 2 premium picks that you're able to get extra for this trade is phenomenal work. It really is. And you think about, let's say the Browns draft board, they had 3 blue chip prospects or whatever. After Cam Ward taking number 1, they're going, okay, our top 3 guys are still on the board, and perhaps they had a 4th player on that board they were going to be perfectly happy with taking at number 5. Like you're more than happy to trade back. And even if you have only those 3, you're taking the risk. It's like, hey, we're getting that extra 1st round pick. This is a phenomenal trade. And whether it's Andrew Berry talking about Travis Hunter so much during this draft process and talking him up so much, calling him Shehu Otani, and just how good he thought he was as a prospect. And does he believe that Travis Hunter is a wide receiver 1st and then a cornerback 2nd? I'm not sure. But if you're going to talk about a prospect like that, you would want to talk about up his wide receiving skills more so than his cornerback skills, because cornerbacks do get drafted high, and I don't think there's ever been one that was number 2, and maybe there has, but like we've seen it with Derek Stingley a couple of years ago. He was picked number 3 overall, and there's been a number of cornerbacks that have been taken number 4 overall. But I think he did a great job to drum up that interest. And the Jaguars, they're a little desperate. They had, you drafted Trevor Lawrence a couple of years ago and expecting him to be the next Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning and John Elway and stuff like that. And he really hasn't panned out to be that type of a prospect. Good quarterback, but by no means, a guy that's a top 5 guy that everybody was expecting him to be. So I think, they're looking to try to make a splash and help him out, obviously with players and stuff like that. But they really need to make this trade work. And Travis Hunter needs to become, what everybody thinks he's going to be in the NFL. And I think he's going to be a very good NFL player. And I think he needs to find a home one side of the ball, and the other side he's going to, have a package of plays for him or whatever. But yeah, I think the Browns did That, good. I think I don't care what the masses are saying. Oh, I'm not renewing my season tickets and blah blah blah. It's like, man, I think you're. It's not like you did a Julio Jones trade where you traded down into the late teens and you're taking a run stuffing defensive tackle that's 350 pounds or whatever in Phil Taylor, who I think was a solid player for his career or whatever, but passing up on a Julio Jones who's going to be a future Hall of Famer or whatever. I don't think you're doing that. You've moved down 3 spots, gained an extra first next year, and you're cooking with a player I think is an excellent prospect in Mason Graham.
I think also what they told us is, and I think this has a lot to do with a lot of the fan bases. Every fan base wants to say, hey, we're going to contend next year. And I think what the Browns told you last night was, hey, we'll try to contend. But to us, it really seems that we might be, a year away. And, look, there's a lot to fill right now. There's an offensive line, most likely in 2026, that could be redone from left tackle to right tackle. 4 expiring contracts, and DeJuan Jones currently slated to be your starting left tackle. So you have no idea how that's going to work out. So I think they think there's a lot of moving parts with this team right now. I do want to get to Shadeur Sanders, John, because I know the football side of it, you've been a fan. And for me, I'm to the point now where I actually feel sorry for Shadeur Sanders, because I think this draft cycle never got to be his. And that's the part that, stinks for the kid. He's the one here. He's the one being spoken about. And basically none of this has been done with any thought process, from him himself, it feels like. So, some thoughts here on Shadeur. And, I had issues with the mobility. And a lot of people, the offensive line was bad. Yes, but you got to overcome some things. The sacks were way too much. But you're in this weird situation now, where, he's already, into the second round. How much further does it go? And maybe what is a spot or a situation that ultimately, because this is what it's all about, is hopefully every kid pans out. But where is the situation here now where Shadeur finds his team and hopefully can go in, and he's not Shadeur Sanders, he's Shadeur, the rookie quarterback?
Yeah, I think falling in his draft can ultimately, I think for quarterbacks, like falling in a draft when you're expected to go high, it can only be a good thing, really. You've seen it, Drew Brees, number of years ago. Obviously, him falling to I think, was he picked either at the first pick of the second round or the last pick in the first round? I can't remember specifically, but he was picked there. We saw it with Aaron Rodgers. We've seen, you get great quarterbacks that fall in a draft that weren't expected to fall, and they use it as fuel for the fire. And I was never arguing for Shadeur Sanders because he has the physical tools, and his physical tools aren't that of like a Cam Ward or even like Jackson Dart, who was picked last night, and Jalen Milroe and stuff like that. He doesn't have those raw physical tools, but what he even you talk about like his taking too many sacks situation, and that is, there's no doubt about it that he took too many sacks. I'm not gonna say like, well, there's this circumstance and that circumstance. It's like, no, like as a quarterback, you have the ability to get rid of the football and not take that sack. But even when he took too many sacks in last year's season, right, for in 2024 season, when I look at the under pressure for these players in this quarterback class, he had a success rate of 37.3%, the exact same under pressure that Cam Ward had. So like all the sacks that he did end up taking in last year, by per play metric, he had the same efficiency number as Cam Ward. So even with those sacks, he was still, when he did actually end up throwing the football, he was very good throwing the football when he was under pressure. And I think that's something that maybe gets lost. And it's like when you just look at a pure one singular number, his expected points play per play was better than Cam Ward's by quite a significant margin under pressure as well. So like he played, it's an aspect of his game he needs to clean up. Absolutely. He can't keep getting sacked like he did in college, because it only gets worse. And we've seen that with a ton of quarterbacks last year, Caleb Williams notably, right? But, you clean up that aspect of it, you're getting rid of the football. I think the game that Shadeur Sanders plays needs to be a timing and rhythm one. he hits that back foot, that ball needs to be coming out on a more consistent basis. And and you talk about the intangibles and stuff like that. His personality is going to rub people the wrong way, but I tend to like really love the way that he plays the game because like in the face of pressure, like there's a ton of clips of him getting absolutely killed and he is just delivering strike after strike, pops back up and like it did not phase him whatsoever. So the dude is tough as nails. He would stand in there and under like heavy pressure and deliver pass after pass when he needed to. So like for me, he took one of the worst teams in the country to playoff contention in 2 years. Like there's something there that I think that teams are missing. And I think that he can be a very, very, very good quarterback. Is he going to be a top 5 guy? I don't know. Right. I'm not confident enough to say that, yes, this guy's going to be a top 5 guy. He has stuff that he has to overcome for sure. But I think he has the ceiling of being that type of a guy. I think he can be that type of a guy. And I don't think you need to have the raw physical tools to be a top 5 guy in the NFL. Right now we have guys that are in the NFL that have these raw physical tools that are like top 5 guys: Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. They have raw physical tools. Joe Burrow, I wouldn't say has raw physical tools. Like he's got good arm strength. He's got tremendous quick. He has a really quick release, and he's got really good accuracy and good enough mobility. I think Shadeur Sanders is kind of like a Joe Burrow light in that sense. So like you can absolutely improve your arm strength at the next level as you get older. You can absolutely improve your accuracy. So and I don't think his accuracy really needs to get improved, obviously, but like you can always improve in the NFL. And it's just like, for me, how much are you banking on that improvement? And I think it's really difficult to actually to have a leap in the NFL. And I think, you want guys that come in and they have good enough tools anyways. And I think he's definitely got good enough as it is now. And you assume that guys will improve.
Yeah, so it's certainly been an interesting, at least cycle for Shadeur Sanders. We'll see. Hope somewhere probably on Friday night, the culmination of where this all ends. So now Friday night, John. Obviously, the Browns kick it off, selection 33. Also have Jacksonville selection at 36. So right off the bat, 33, 36, you're walking out with, 2 of the top 4 players remaining on the board here. You come back in round 3, you have selection 67 as well, and you have selection 94. So the Browns, have 4 selections here. It'll be 6 selections in the top 126, 5 selections in the top 94. What do you think, works here on Friday night? Where do you think there's still some, and there's some players available. There's some players that have slipped, whether it's off field, whether it's maybe injury concern. But where do you see this shaking out here on Friday night? Because as much as everybody wants to talk about the trade and it wasn't Hunter, this, that, and the other thing, there was a chance here, where it was only going to be 4 guys. But even still, maybe that wasn't going to be the case, because there was a lot of talk the Browns maybe would have jumped up from 33 back into round 1 to maybe address the quarterback. So the picks that could have been made could have been a really small amount, whereas now it looks like it could be pretty bountiful. 4 picks remaining here in the top 94 selections, 4 picks coming Friday night.
Yeah, I think the one disappointing part of how the board fell last night in terms of what the Browns are going to attack here at the top of the second is there's the offensive line position really got attacked in the first round, which, I mean, smart on teams to do that. Like that's where you find most of your offensive line talent. So according to the consensus big board, the kid from Minnesota, Ursary, is probably the top available guy. And then it kind of drops off to like the Arizona guy and Jonah Saviani. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name correctly, but that's what you're probably looking at in terms of offensive line help, because the Browns, let's face it, like we talked about it earlier, they're probably going to have a completely new look offensive line in 2026. Lots of expiring contracts. You got guys that are getting old, and they need help there, and you're hoping maybe a full season of health can help these guys. I'd be remiss to say that if I would be stoked if they took Shadeur Sanders, here with one of these 2 picks, because the fact that he fell, I think he can get a good player. And then like you're talking about like you're not now pressured to be like day one starter. You can sit and maybe learn the game. That's the same thing with like Jalen Milroe if you wanted to go that route as well. But I think really like at the the beginning of the third round, I think like a Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. If you want if you look over it across the border to Detroit and see what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done for that franchise, like you want to get yourself a replica of him. That's what Jalen Noel is that he's going to play the game like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, and can be a really good wide receiver in his class. I think this wide receiver class is a bit weak. I'm not a fan of like Luther Burden. Like I know everybody's talking about Luther Burden, like, oh, we got to go get this guy or whatever. I don't see it with him. I think he's got like he has drop issues. He's got route issues. I don't think he separates real good. He's what?
Small hands.
Small. Does he have small hands?
Yes, he does.
All right. Yeah. So maybe that's why he has the drop issues. He's got small hands. So yeah. And I wouldn't put it past him to maybe take like a Mike Green here, who was phenomenal on the field. Obviously he has his off-field issues and stuff like that. We've known that the Browns have kind of overlooked some of that type of stuff, but maybe they're kind of turning a leaf there of maybe they're not wanting to bring those types of guys in. So I wouldn't, from a football standpoint, I totally get why you'd pick Mike Green off the field. You're kind of like, let's, we've already been burned by that a couple of times, and so like you want to stay away from that. But I don't see running back until maybe later in the draft, like in that 94 pick or maybe into the fourth round. I know everybody in Cleveland wants a running back picked, but I think they're going to wait until later in the draft to do that. And if you are okay with the medicals on him, a guy like Will Johnson, who was considered a top 10 pick just less than 6 months ago, and fell because of the medicals. If you are okay with the medicals on him, he'd be a steal at this point in the draft.
I think there's a lot there. Mike Green, if you just say, oh man, the player, and you think, and hey man, if I was really interested in Abdul Carter and an entire round later, I can get a talent like Mike Green. But again, it's, it's not once with Mike Green. Unfortunately, it's twice.
Yep.
And for the Browns, this is obviously something they're trying to avoid, that type of stench that was put on the franchise.
Yeah.
So it really, really would be a difficult decision to say, well, not that guy, but it's okay for that guy. But go ahead.
I'd say Donovan Izuraku.
Yep.
That's the guy. That's the guy that you'd probably go, hey, he's the guy with the cleaner outside, off the field thing or whatever. And his play on the field is phenomenal. So like, yeah, that's the guy that
the thing with Izuraku, that was really the most impressive thing is everybody played Boston College. The game plan the entire week was, all right, we got to stop that dude. That dude can wreck our day.
Yeah.
And I believe it was 6 games with multiple sacks, which is just an insane thing to say. But again, you're getting a guy who could have gone round 1. You would get him in round 2. And again, that gives you him paired with Miles for 5 more seasons. You tell a couple more years of McGuire. You would still have that rotation in the interior for 3 years with Graham, Hall, and certainly Briggs. But it's certainly going to be fascinating the way watch this all unfold tonight. I'm going to get you guys another episode here today. We will be probably figuring that to drop somewhere, 5:30. We will be firing it up again at 6:30 for round 2 coverage. It was a good thing we went early last night because we started to hear about the rumblings there may be a trade. And then obviously it all broke. And I kind of equated it, it was kind of like, watching the OJ Bronco ride. Because all of a sudden now the Browns had traded, what's it going to be? How bad's it going to be? And you hear everything. And it was kind of like, and the 2026 first round pick. And all of a sudden it was like, well, in those situations, what everybody say? Oh my God, you got to be blown away. Well, Jacksonville 100% blew you away. And the new GM down in Jacksonville, who, comes from the Los Angeles Rams and even referenced it in his presser that he came from the team that basically said, F them first round picks. And that's exactly what he did. He burned them. He got the guy he wanted. The local guy gives you an attraction on both sides of the ball. It's not going to stop the talk about everybody trying to say that the Jacksonville Jaguars will become the London Jaguars probably anytime soon. But you rejuvenated that Jacksonville Jaguars fan base, whereas the Browns now can fill many, many holes that they still have within this roster. He is John Kosko from PFF. I think it's probably the first time I think he's been here with us. John, certainly been a guest of mine for many, many years. Always great conversation, always great insight. Appreciate you, John. I think we're all at the same point here. We got to find a way to get a little bit of rest here today. Also, one thing, folks, we were obviously on the picks last night. I was getting from John Kosko. So it's nice to have that information a tad bit early. It makes the show flow a little bit easier, certainly. Hopefully we can work on the dinger, which was non-existent as far as trying to announce the pick had been made last night. But again, we will be here tonight. We will be here tomorrow. We appreciate all the support here that you guys have given us over the last few months. You know, at the end of a terrible season, navigating free agency, the whole Myles Garrett scenario, all the draft coverage, and now round 1 in the book, day 2 to begin here for the 2025 NFL draft. This Browns 3D on the OBR has been brought to you by State Sharpening, Mower Sales and Service. This has been your daily delivery of all things dog pound. Browns 3D on the OBR, and we will talk to you all later.